Okay. All right, we're being live streamed. Hey, welcome. My name is Paul Sugarman of the Instant Shakespeare Company. And today on the 4th of July, we are going to read the Declaration of Independence. We're going to do this along with Derek Tarson, and then we will read the Declaration of Independence, maybe have any sorts of thoughts people want to share on it, and then we will read the Bill of Rights. So anyways, I just think it's a great thing on this 4th of July to remember, really the important document of the day and our Declaration of Independence. And also, just that it's a lot of what I love about this country, and that it espouses, some of the highest ideals. And there's a lot of it that we still haven't lived up to yet. So I think it's good to read it and to be reminded of it as a challenge that we still have a way to go, but just to appreciate what this is. And anyways, so here we have it, the Declaration of Independence. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodations of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only.
He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise. the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within.
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries.
He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He is affected to render military independent of and superior to the civil power.
He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states,
for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury,
for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments,
for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people.
He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun, with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Signed by John Hancock, President, and then also, do you want to join me in listing all of the signers, or should I just?
Okay. Georgia, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, George Walton.
North Carolina, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, John Penn.
South Carolina, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., Arthur Middleton.
We already said, but Massachusetts, John Hancock.
Maryland, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll of Carrollton.
Virginia, George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton.
Pennsylvania, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, George Ross.
Delaware, Caesar Rodney, George Reed, Thomas McKean.
New York, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, Lewis Morris.
New Jersey, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, Abraham Clark.
New Hampshire, Josiah Bartlett, William Whipple.
Massachusetts, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Treat Payne, Elbridge Gerry.
Rhode Island, Stephen Hopkins, William Ellery.
Connecticut, Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, Oliver Wolcott.
New Hampshire, Matthew Thornton.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Derek. It was great to hear it and to hear it from different voices. Our attendee, I'm sorry, I still don't see you. I hope you're wanted to just listen, but anyways, I mean, I think it's funny. There's always sorts of different things. I mean, there's that one, the merciless Indian savages, but which yeah, that's not great. But pretty much, I mean, that is not.
But you put that in context. I mean, towns were being razed. So I mean, this
was actually happening
on the Indian race, but there was a real danger.
Yeah, and this was a real thing that they were talking about, of the British trying to get them to do this as well. I believe there is right. Actually that is a historical fact. It just sort of hits us pretty unpleasantly. But one of the things that I do really love about it, that I do personally believe, is the idea of we should be able to have more people come into this country, because I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous that we have such a big country, and there's so much that is messed up in the world, largely due to our efforts sometimes politically, but also more economically, as the place that has been the real driver for the industrialization that has led to so much climate change, which is disrupting so many places where people live, and also our other policies that are just not taking care of people. And then the people in this country are like, oh no, we can't let anybody in. And it's like, it's a huge country. If the rest of the country was populated I mean, the way like New Jersey is populated is densely, we could have like over 2 billion people in this country. You know, I'm not saying we want to go there, but I mean, it's like when there's so many things, so many sort of refugees that it's like, okay, we'll let, I mean, we just don't do anything compared to what other countries do and what we should do as laid out in this declaration. You know, that I think that is that there are things that are not actually sort of documents of our country, but things that we do, like what's on the Statue of Liberty. I mean, bring us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And I think that that's a lot of what gave this country the economic dynamism, which made it the sort of economic superpower of the 20th century. And but we now have to be the superpower to to take care of our planet and each other. So I do also like to read the Bill of Rights as well, because I think just the first these first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which I think we do have to, I mean, acknowledge that they were integral to the Constitution being able to be passed. You know, that this was part of the thing. One of the challenges of getting the Constitution passed is like, okay, well, you're imposing all of, I mean, we've had various other sorts of government things that didn't work out, the Articles of Confederation and the sort of idea in the Declaration almost, which says free and independent states, like each state could be like its own sort of country. But I mean, that the Constitution was sort of necessary to harness and to bring things together, but people didn't trust it, and so they wanted to have these guarantees in the Bill of Rights, which our present Supreme Court sometimes seems to trot all over, in my view. But so
I'm just looking at Amendment 2.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, do you not see the world's well-regulated are in that amendment?
Right.
Are those words in the amendment? Yes, they are. All right. So yeah. So should we start with, should we alternate and you can start with the first one, or?
Sure, that's fine. Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Amendment 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Amendment 3, no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation.
Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense.
Amendment 7. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law.
Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Amendment 10. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people.
Good.
Thank you. I mean, and I think these are also things where it's like, I mean, these were written, I mean, almost, we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, but over 200 years ago, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. I mean, that's in our basic Bill of Rights, and yet we do things, I mean, like solitary confinement and other ways that we treat people that are cruel and unusual.
Right.
I mean, I guess one of the sorts of things and reasons we says like, well, we do it so often, it's not really unusual. It may be cruel, but it's usual. So that's how, I mean, which is like,
yeah. Or excessive fines imposed. I mean, there's so many problems with, people getting out of prison and being subject to these fines that they can't afford, and then so.
Yeah, no. And I mean, it's also, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of, I mean, I know there's a lot of things that can be very, very frustrating with this country, and a lot of things that aren't living up to what it do. But this is the idea of why they did it in the first time, of the people, by the people, for the people, and that's, we're not, unfortunately, we don't talk about the common good. We talk about how can we make sure that the banks don't fall apart, so that the economy can keep going. It's like we just have to, instead of just really doing what I think a lot of these people back then sort of envisioned, is that this was going to be a whole new type of government, a government that really was of the people, and that they didn't, I mean, even when they were doing the Constitution, they really had no idea that political parties, and those sorts of things, and it's just our discourse. It's become so toxic that and because people don't listen. So I mean, and this was, I mean, you have to, I mean, admire that it's like, okay, this Declaration of Independence. And also, I mean, I already watched it today because Democracy Now! Features it every 4th of July, is having James Earl Jones reading Frederick Douglass's great speech, What Does 4th of July Mean to a Slave, which he'd done in 1852, which is so brilliant, and such a sort of counter argument against this, in terms of, it's like, how can you have these great ideals and then be treating people worse than almost any other country in history, and that's something that we have to acknowledge that has been true in this country, and unfortunately is still true, as we have these so-called Christian groups doing things like trying to get all of these African nations to subscribe to all of these anti-LGBTQ things that I mean, they're putting people's lives at risk, and it's like, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I don't get how, I mean, these people can call themselves Christians and then just, sit in judgment on other people and make people not able to live their lives. I mean, also, as I was saying earlier, Amendment 9. I mean, rights shall not be construed, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people, which is like the rights that the people already have, they still have. And I mean, I think from the historical record that we can clearly see there were various ways that people had abortions, and that was a right that they had. And so any sorts of things, all of these laws that have been over from these religion, and also that so many of these laws come from a misunderstanding and a sort of violation of the First Amendment, of that no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The idea of we've got to keep these things separate for the protection of both of them, for both government and religion. Because you see, I mean, what happens when we have these theocratic states, such as in Iran and Afghanistan, and it's horrible, and it disenchants people from both, and so that's one of the things, the idea of these balances that we've got to have, and I think also we either need to have basic minimum tests for Supreme Court justices, or just term limits, please, or a larger court, because that's yeah. I'm sorry. Okay, so Derek, do you have any other thing you'd like to share about these things, or?
I just would share that the news came in last week that the Seventh Amendment is being examined by the Supreme Court next term. And it's an interesting issue, is whether when the SEC brings enforcement actions, does the defendant have the right to trial by jury? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
That is, yeah, well,
right.
There are nice things, and and also though I do want to congratulate you, Derek. You were for what you told me earlier about that you'd worked on an amicus brief for the for one of the issues that the Supreme Court made a good decision on this year.
That's correct. Tyler versus Hennepin County, finding that taking of a property in a tax foreclosure and then retaining the surplus after sale, in that case $25,000, is an unconstitutional thing. And we're having this problem right in New York, except hopefully we're not anymore after this decision.
Yeah,
still to be determined. Still developing. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, the law goes on, and things get decided, but we just it seems a lot of ways our legal system does too much sort of protecting itself as opposed to really bringing justice for people. And but those are the ideals, and so that's what we keep striving for. So, all right. Well, I guess that about does it for. I'll end our live stream. We have the Instant Shakespeare Company does readings of all of Shakespeare's plays every year. We'll have our new schedule out soon. We're doing readings at in person and on Zoom, in person at various branches of the New York Public Library, and we will be getting on with that soon. So thank you.
And for the first year in Brooklyn as well as Manhattan. So I think we should trumpet that.
Okay. Yes, indeed. We will. All right. Take care.
Okay.
Okay. Let me just.